Good morning, everybody. It's Ben Baker, and welcome to the YourLIVINGBrand.live show. It is Wednesday. Oh, it's Wednesday today. It is the 4th of October. How did it get to be October? I was just thinking it was summer the other day. Anyway, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. For new people to the show, this show is all about telling brand stories. What makes you different? What makes you valuable? What makes you worth listening to, and why should people care about you? It's a sad world when everything is becoming a commodity, when everything is looking at it and sit there saying, well, you're the same as everybody else, so let's buy the cheaper one. This show tends to take a look at why are companies different? What's your special story? Why should people care about you? And if they care about you and they see your value, guess what? The commodity question 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100 goes away. It's all about being valuable in the eyes of the people that are doing business with you and telling your brand story in a way that people get it, they engage with it, and they want to hear more and they want to know more about you. So that's what this show is about. Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I have a company called Your Brand Marketing, and Your Brand Marketing does 3 things. We consult, we teach, and we speak on brand, message, market, vision, and value. We want to help you understand who you are, what you do, why you do it, who your audience is, and why they should care about you, and help you tell that story so people do care, and not only care, but they engage and they tell your brand story to others so they can care and do more business with you. Now, this week, I've got Sam Thiam on the show. Now, Sam is a university professor at SFU. He's got a great company called GradusOne, and I'll let him tell that story. But on top of that, Sam does an amazing amount of volunteering, not only locally, but nationally and internationally, and has done so much that he's garnered the, both the Governor General's Award and also the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Award for volunteerism. So Sam is an incredible person. So sit back, listen to his story. It's pre-recorded, but I think you're going to enjoy it. I'll talk to you when we're done. So Sam, thank you very much for coming to the show. I really appreciate having you. It's been a while since we've talked, so it's great to have you here.
Oh no, and I consider it a tremendous opportunity for me to share and to catch up with you as well.
Well, you have such a phenomenal story. You and I met when you were doing some prep for a TED Talk, and that's where you and I first met. But tell me the story, about Sam. Tell me the story about GradusOne. You tell me, what makes you interesting, what makes you different, and why people find you valuable.
I hope they find me valuable, but
I do. So
I always find that, I think what I always say is that there are guiding principles in my life. I call them the 5 core elements. And
right.
my five core elements are leadership, story sharing, corporate community relations, student development, and community do-gooder. These are 5 things that I would say over the years have crystallized to make me who I am. This also guides me in my focus and direction. So I've got numerous projects that I'm working on. But what I find is that, so I've got 16 projects if you include my teaching. And
wow.
But what I find is people say you can't do a good job on 16 projects simultaneously. And I said, well, actually, here's the thing. All 16 hit 5 out of 5 on who I am and what makes me tick. Mm-hmm. As a result, what I find is that, they layer on top of each other, but this allows me to pick and choose what I would like to pursue and what I would like to do. So I'm very focused and targeted, and I'm not aimless. It's not like, you see something on the side and somebody comes up and says, let's do this. No, I actually put it through those 5 core elements, and that will help me guide to what I need to do.
Right.
But to further your aspect, I think one of the resonating things for me is the fact that I want to share myself. There is a need to share, and especially to an audience of young people. Many of them are lost and confused. There's a lot of noise out there telling them what to do, how to do it. And as a result, what I want to do is help them in their journey to figure out who they want to be. So this is why we created GradusOne. I co-founded GradusOne, and GradusOne is this organization to help high school, post-secondary, recent grads in life and career. I always say that there's this horizon beyond of where you would like to be, but that's not yours. It's painted by the people around you. And unless you know the horizon within, how can you walk to this horizon beyond? So that's how GradusOne was created, and it hits 5 out of 5 as an example of my 5 core elements.
Well, that's cool, because I like to explore that a little further, because there's so many kids out there. And I call them kids because, I'm getting close to 50, so I'm allowed to call them kids now, that are rudderless. And it's not their fault. It's either they haven't had the direction from parents, they haven't had the direction from school, they're not being taught what they need to succeed. The school system is not set up the way to lead them into the future. It's set up to lead them the way that the future was 30, 40 years ago. And, so my question is to you is, what's the philosophy of the school in terms of what are the key things that you guys do to help people tangibly move forward?
Yeah. And actually what I would say is, in my perspectives, the system hasn't changed over the years. I remember walking across the stage and getting my degree, and this giant door slammed behind me, and everything familiar was behind the door, and I went to grab the handle, and there's no handle. I think what I would say... Great
analogy.
But I had no idea what I should do, who I am, and I went out searching for work. Well, what do? You go apply for jobs. Well, and actually one thing I will show here to your audience is what I hold are these letters. These letters are all the times that I was rejected by companies, people who said, you don't know who you are, we have no job for you. And my realization is I didn't know who I was. So over all of these years, this has sat with me to create something to help these individuals and students. I think people have focus and perspective, like parents, associates, instructors, teachers, but everybody's imposing their perspectives on them, but nobody's listening to the individual. And I did an exercise, and I do this often in my class. I'll ask students when I'm teaching, what is your brand? Or do you have a brand?
Right.
And as I go around the room, every single person says they don't have a brand. I'm like, well, whether you know it or not, you have a brand. Now, what you need to do is talk to people around you, talk to your parents, talk to friends. What words do they use to describe you? But don't misunderstand the point. You actually have a brand, but they don't realize it. Now, what are you doing with this brand, and how are you building this brand is the next step. So at GradusOne, we did a 8-step program called Step Up. And it was right from how do you create this brand, how do you present this brand, how do you articulate the brand, what is your story, to how do we connect you to people in industry. So we did this 8-step program. We also do a boot camp to help high school students transition into university, and how can they better be prepared for the next stage in their life. And then we do these what I call panel discussions on certain topics. We have one coming up on October 11th on the accounting area, but it's not just for accountants. It's for anybody who wants to sit there and listen to people's stories and journey about how they got where they are. The accounting is only one part. It's that this is what I do.
Right.
But these people are going to share how they got there and who they are.
Now, it's interesting you talk about personal brand, because most people, when they think brand, think the logo, whether it's a personal brand or, the Tiger Woods brand, or whether it's a corporate brand like Nike. But that's not what a brand is. A brand is who you are, what you do, why you do it, and why people care about you. It's how other people interact with you and what they perceive you to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are not portraying who you are and be able to tell an effective story about who you are,
Mm-hmm.
how is anybody else supposed to understand, engage, and believe in you and
Right.
give you the opportunity to move forward?
So, Ben, what I always tell people is, if you don't believe in yourself, how am I going to believe in you? And
Yeah.
first and foremost, you need to believe in yourself, your brand. Uh, I would also go further to say the fact that, I agree with you. Like, that's what a brand is. People think of it as either as a product or a logo,
Mm-hmm.
but the brand is your value proposition. What do
Yeah.
you offer that is unique and different? And I even tell my students, and I don't mean this in a cliche type of way, but I said, do you know that in the history of this world, do you realize there is nobody that is an exact replica of you? In
True.
4.5 billion people in the earth today, there is nobody that is exactly like you. And even in the future, unless we're into cloning, there will never be anybody like you. So let's
And even
put
if
this
they
aside.
clone you, they may look the same as you,
But they're not
but
going to
they're
be
still
you.
going to have different traits.
Totally. So let's start focusing on what makes you unique as an individual. And this is where I really try to work with them to start pulling those words or those stories, things that matter to them, and building. And I like the word you use of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And I also call it story sharing, because storytelling is embracing that part of it, but it also means sharing, means what I like about story sharing is I want to tell you my story, but I want you to equally share your story. And my story is no better than yours. It's another story. And I think that's how this conversation transpires. And we both become wiser as a result of story sharing.
Because we learn from each other's story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
We do.
that's how education and how real learning happens. If I tell you my story and you tell me your story, those stories are going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be based on your experiences, your past, your future, your ideas, and mine.
Mm-hmm.
And where they're different is where the learning experiences are. And that's what makes things interesting.
Oh, totally. And even in my class, I say what you get out of me in the class as a lecture is knowledge, is just knowledge. But what I try to embrace in that is wisdom. Like, in other words, how do we apply this knowledge to the real world and apply it to a real world setting? And in my class, what I often say is that there's a slide I put up and it says myth, theory, and practice. Myth is
Right.
the story. Myth is this story that's emerged, factual or is not. It doesn't matter, but it's a story. Theory is the logical piece that tries to prove whether it happens or it doesn't happen. But a theory only takes it so far. Practice says, okay, let's take the theory and put it in the real practical world and test the theory to see if it actually works or not. And a quick example I will give you is if you tell people, if you drop a penny from the top of the Empire State Building and it hits somebody down below, what's going to happen? And the myth is they're going to die.
Right.
Well, and that's a myth. But the theory says actually, but the theory says if you drop a penny, eventually being 1 gram, the wind resistance is going to catch it. It's going to start fluttering. And by the time it hits you down below, it's going to feel like a bump on your chin. And that's it. Like nothing more than that, like a bumblebee bumping your chin.
Right.
So the theory says this, but you can only prove it as a theory because theoretically, this is what the world is known to be. So this professor goes to the people at the Empire State Building and he says, I want to prove this theory. And my assistant is going to throw pennies off the roof of the building. I'm going to be down there, get hit by the pennies, and, we'll prove the theory. And they said, well, no, people have died. Well, he said, who's died? And he said, well, we don't know, but people have died here.
Right.
So you're not allowed to do this. So the theory only goes that far. We haven't proven anything. So
But the myth
practice
is perpetuated.
Totally. The myth has perpetuated the theory. So what the professor does is he goes out into a field, raises a balloon to the height of the Empire State Building, releases a contraption of pennies, and all these pennies rain down, and he's down there trying to get hit by them. And sure enough, it's just a brush. So this is where I really want young people, or anybody in that matter, to realize that there's myth that's out there of what the stories are, but they're unproven. Theories will say, here's what society has created as a result of research, which is valuable and important. But how does this apply in the real world? That's where the wisdom comes in. And that's what I really try to stress to my students and anybody that I mentor and coach.
Yeah. And I'll take that even one step further. And I love where you're going with this, is that for people, it's not the story you tell, it's whether that story can be validated. If you tell everybody I'm trustworthy and people don't perceive you as being trustworthy, you're not trustworthy.
No.
You know, you could tell people I'm always on time.
Yep.
And in 3 days in a row, you're late.
Yeah.
You're late, and you're always late. And that's the perception that people will have of you and your brand.
Yep.
So it's not just what you say, it's what you do. Yes. And if what you say and what you do is incongruent, what you do trumps.
Oh, totally. And let's not use that word, but yes.
Well, okay, yeah. We're in Canada. It's okay to use the word Trump. We can use it in a different derivative.
But also,
I'm not signing any executive orders today.
No, good for you. But the other thing is, when I wrote my book on personal storytelling, part of that book on personal storytelling is about developing this personal brand. And the very first lines in my book says, what's the last story that you read? What's the last story that you told? But what's the last story you lived? And that last story you lived is critical, because that's what helps to establish and build your brand. By reading a story, telling a story, you may be sharing, your perspectives, somebody else's brand, you're telling and explaining. But what's the last story you lived is very much like my signature tagline, everyone's life is an autobiography, make yours worth reading. They go hand in hand. I want you to go through life. I want you to experience, be curious, and validate and appreciate the things around you. And it makes for a very rich experience.
Absolutely, because life is not just about theory. Life is about living. Life is about experiencing. Life is about challenging. Life is about seeing where the edges are, going right to the edge, and maybe peering over the corner. It's understanding that until you experience things, you don't really know. You think, you think you know, but until you actually do it yourself, all you have is somebody else's say so. Yep. And, I've never been to Africa. I've never been on safari. Yep. I've seen 1,000 pictures. I've talked to guides. I've talked to people who've gone on safari, but I've never been. Yeah. And, the closest I've ever been is a safari at Disney World. And you know what? That's not really a safari, ladies and gentlemen. But, it's until I'm actually jump on a plane and fly the 30 hours down to South Africa, get on a truck and, go into the bush and spend 4 or 5 days in the bush, experiencing it. All I have is the stories, and they're other people's stories.
True. And one thing that I also do in my class, we talk about mental models. It's exactly what you've just described as a mental model. You talk about African safari and all. What I do is I put up a slide with the picture of an ocean, and it's there, and we all have this mental model of what the ocean is. And I go around the room and I ask people, give me one word and one word only based on this picture and this image that you see. And I always enjoy it, because what I find is that I get words like waves, water, salty, fish, scary, deep, blue, calm, and it goes on and on and on. And many times there's no duplication of words, and maybe there's 30, 40 words. And at the end of it, I look at this list on my whiteboard, and the students are there, and I said, what do you notice about this list? And they look at it and they go, well, all the words are different. And I said, what this reminds you is, just because you see blue does not mean that everything about the ocean is blue and that your perspectives are right. Somebody will see the word fish. That's what the ocean means to them. It's not right or wrong. And equally, if somebody, and it often happens, somebody will say calm and someone later on will say scary. So I look at this and I say, how can something be calm and scary at the same time?
Different viewpoints.
Totally. And I try to get them to better appreciate each other's viewpoint and how we can learn from each other, so that if they find the ocean scary and you find it calm, let's bring you together and both of you share your perspectives on why do you see it as calm? Why do you see it as scary? And maybe through that, either you will get a better respect and appreciation because now you might respect it more because it can be scary, or the other person might be, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And so it is about those perspectives and, you know, creating those, we have the mental models, but how do we support it? And I think your analogy about going to Africa, and I can read about it, I've seen pictures and everything, I can describe it, but if you're at a party and you're telling people about African safaris because you've got a lot of experience in it because of what we've been exposed to society-wise,
Right.
But if somebody comes into the room who actually has gone to, Namibia
But
5
wherever.
times,
Yeah.
and gone on safari, I'm going to stand aside and then let them take over the conversation, or vice versa, the conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, the key thing I'm hearing you say is words. Because words elicit ideas. And, interpretation of words are very different. And it's interesting because too many people are hung up on a particular word and the meaning and the derivative of a word, where the same word can have different meanings to different people. When we're getting people to do brand exercises, and I'm sure I'll let you ask you this out, we get different people to describe what they think the brand is. And it can be all over the map. What the words that they use, the phrases that they use, their association with color can be different, but they're not wrong in their viewpoint. It's how they interact with the brand. And I'm sure when you're doing that with students, you're probably doing similar type exercises.
Oh, totally. And in one of my classes last week, I actually had them sit down and write a personal statement in week 3, and we're in week 4 now, so last week. And in week 10, we're going to revisit the personal statement. It was hard for so many of them to sit down and write down a paragraph describing themselves to themselves.
Right.
And I think it was an eye-opener to them to remind them that, you're in an environment where there's a lot of people, and 3-4 years from now, they're all going to be walking off across the stage and they're all going to be out there now looking for work. If majority of them do not know what their personal brand or their personal statement is, and you can nail it down now, and it will change over time.
Of course it will.
This is going to give you an advantage, because when you have to sit in front of somebody and articulate who you are, all of a sudden, by having this statement or the 5 core elements, you're better suited. I mean, if I ever go for a job interview and they make the mistake of saying, Sam, so tell me about who you are. Well, I'm going to go down a pathway and I can articulate who I am because I've really self-reflected on who I am.
Right.
I think one of the most important things I would tell people is when you choose these words or this personal statement, underlying everything is why. Why did you choose that word? So if I chose story sharing, then I ask myself in a self-reflective manner, why is story sharing important for you? And I said, well, I have a message to share. And then I ask myself, why is sharing so important? Well, I want to help people in their journey. And by sharing of myself and then listening to what they say, I can support them in their journey. Well, why is that important? And I go down a pathway until hopefully I can exhaust my whys, but it really crystallizes. And that's what I've done to come up with those 5 core elements for me.
Right. It's the Simon Sinek, start with why. That's
why it's really important.
Exactly. Because if you don't understand why, it's not a matter of understanding what you do. It's understanding why you do it. And the why is so important. It's interesting because I have lots of friends of mine that are senior vice presidents, CEOs of different corporations. And when they're doing interviews, especially interviews of people that are just out of university, they're looking more for personality than real true skills. Because when you're 18, 19, 21, 22 years old, you really don't know that much. Yeah. You've gone to school for a number of years. If you're lucky, you've had 1 or 2 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
but they want to know that people have passion,
Mm-hmm.
that they have drive,
Yep.
that they understand who they are, and that they're willing to commit,
Mm-hmm.
to a process, because
Right.
it's their job as companies to bring you into the company and teach you the culture, and teach you the brand, and teach you how they do things, and bring
Mm-hmm.
you into the skill set, because it's not just the widgets that you move from A to B, it's why you're moving the widgets.
Oh, and a prime example I can give you is I applied for a student engagement job at Simon Fraser University at the BD School of Business, and I went to the interview. And here's the thing, Ben, I had no academic experience in student engagement. I had no practical experience in student engagement, but I didn't go into the job interview saying what I was going to do. I went into the job to share why I wanted this job, and I shared my letters of rejection and how I want to come and I want to support the students so that they're able to move forward. And it was more about not me, it's about them and how important that is. And then when I left, the next thing I know, I got a phone call saying, well, we really want to hire you. And as a result, I mean, your story is compelling. And we know that it's not a matter of, you're here to get a wage and you're going to do 9 to 5. Actually, for us, it's more like, can we put you, we're not going to put you in a box because that's not going to work for you. So you get to do what you want. The flip
They
side,
understand the value of your personal brand.
Oh, totally. And if it doesn't align, and I've even had a situation where I worked for a large company in the past, and somebody once told me, Sam, can you curb your enthusiasm for work because it's making the others feel uncomfortable? I'm thinking, I have to get out of here, because if it's curbing if my enthusiasm is making them feel awkward, this is not a place for me.
Wrong company to be in.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
No, it's amazing, and we could talk about this all day. I mean, there is so much to understand, that the value and the skills that are going to be, sought after over the next 10, 20, 30 years are the soft skills. The skills to interpolate, the skills to, deal with customer service type issues, the skills to listen and to actively listen and to engage. Yes, absolutely, technology is there. But you know what? We're realizing that technology without a human face attached to it is very, very unappealing to most people. Totally. If you take a look at how a lot of the engagement is done through automation, it is, a lot of people are turning away from it because there isn't that human face, and people crave humans, and people crave stories and relationships and interaction. And those are the key things that I think that, that need to be taught.
No, and there's a really good story I share to students and young professionals, and I call it the teacup story. And the idea behind it is, and this is a real story, I had a group of students that went on an academic case competition. So it's like varsity sports, but academic in nature. And they went to Washington State. And part of the opportunity was they got to meet some senior people at JP Morgan. And, so we had about 60 students, the team coaches from around the world that all gathered in the, offices or the theater of JP Morgan. And as a result, the senior executives talked to the students, shared about some of the key things that, matter and all that. And at the end of it all, everybody said their goodbyes and thank yous, and they walked out. Except my coach came back just to say, personally, I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and it really means a lot to our students. And he sparked a conversation with the senior-most person at JP Morgan, and they were talking. But here's the thing. The senior-most person was, while they were talking, picking up the teacups and the saucers from the table and putting it on the sideboard while they were talking. And my coach said, can I help you? Or, I assume that people are here to do this for you. And he said, look, I wouldn't do this at home. I wouldn't leave teacups or saucers and plates just lying around. I put it away. But he said, here's the important point. I could talk to any of these 60 students here today. All of them are smart, articulate, and bright. And I'm sure that I could easily take any one of them and they're going to succeed at my company. But if one of them would have actually picked up their teacup without anything and just moved it over there and said thank you and left, that's the student I want to talk to. the one who actually takes that. And what it resonates on me when I hear a story like that is it's not the big stuff. It's the little things that you ingrain in your life as a daily routine. Now, the flip side is when you share a story like that, the first thing people are going to do is, young people might do, is go to a meeting, go to an event, and they pick up their teacup and say, okay, we're done the meeting. I just want to put my teacup here. I'm looking for a job. I hope somebody's noticing
Chicken Bob.
No, you got to integrate these simple aspects into your life because people are watching. And it's exactly to your point, Ben, that what's important and critical is the fact that, you don't do it because it's going to get you a job. You don't do it because, of anything that ticks a box. You do it because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. Now, we've had a great time. I'm going to ask you one last question. I'm going to let you go. This is a question I ask everybody. Mm-hmm. When you walk out of the room, mm-hmm. when you close the door behind you, when you get in your car and you drive away, what's the number one thing you want people to think about you mm-hmm. or GradusOne?
Okay. I think that's an easy one for me to answer. I think for me, it's about the fact that I did whatever I could. I shared for my everything that I hold. There's nothing that I hold back. And I think really supporting and helping people in life and career is critical because I think there's this holistic goal we can have how we want to change the world and change mm-hmm. it through our eyes. I've changed that perspective in myself to say that what I want to do is support the change in individuals, because if I spend time with someone, if I meet them for coffee, if I open up doors for them unselfishly and I ask for nothing in return and they succeed, they see the world differently. So I've changed the world, but I don't want to change the world through my eyes. I want to change the world through the eyes of the people I support because they will see the world differently.
Nice.
And I think that that's really valuable to do, is that it's accessible and approachable. It's all it is making sure you make yourself available to others in whatever capacity. And that's why I've been able to mentor hundreds over the years, is because I don't, based on what people would say, could you find time to meet with me? I don't find time to meet with people. I make the time to meet with them. Finding means you're inconvenient and we'll see what I can do and squeeze you in. Making time means I value you as an individual. You're mm-hmm. equally important to me. I need to make the time for you. So I really want to be there to guide and support people in life and career.
That's great. You know what? It's important because it's those, as you said, it's the little things that we do that help change the world. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I can't change the entire world, but I can change the world around me.
Yes.
And if I influence a few people and they influence a few people and they influence a few people beyond that, mm-hmm. the world will get a little bit better.
Always.
And it's just doing the little things to try to make the world that you live in just that much better for other people. And I appreciate that.
No, and not to be a bystander in life.
No. Can't be a bystander. Roll up your sleeves and get involved, because you know what? The world needs more people to get involved.
Oh, yeah. But
Sam, thank you very much. I appreciate you being on the show. It's been a pleasure. Hang out in the green room. I'll be right back. I just want to say goodbye to everybody.
Thank you, Ben.
And I really want to thank Sam, and I want to thank all of you for taking the time and making the time to listen to this show and being with us on the show. Now, if you enjoy the show, it's every Wednesday at 10 o'clock Pacific. And what you can do is you can go to YourLIVINGBrand.live and sign up, and it will remind you. And if you miss the broadcast, you'll get a replay. So sign up at YourLIVINGBrand.live, and we will make sure that, if you can make the broadcast, if you can make it live, we'd love to see you. But if you can't, that's okay. It's going to be there and it's going to be rebroadcast and you're going to be able to listen to it. So every week we talk to different people and we talk to them about what makes them special and different and interesting. So we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next week. Have a great day. And it's Ben Baker from Your Brand Marketing, and we want to help to create your living brand. Have a great day.